Welcome to the fastest daf in town. Today we must set this Yevamot daf Yud Zayin. We're going to begin on Yud Zayin with Al, 4 lines from the top. Ki Amrisa Kamed Shmuel Amrulei, when it's said in front of Shmuel, was said as follows: Bincha haba min Yisraelis kari bincha. Your son that comes from a Yisraelis, namely a Jewish woman, so that is still considered to be your child, which means that this child, even though the father may not be Jewish, but if the mother's Jewish, that makes the son Jewish. However, we do not say that if the mother is an Obedes Kachavim, if she's not Jewish, we don't call her your son, but rather her son. And therefore, this is what it's come to tell you, as we're all familiar, that when it comes to the status of a child, it's totally on the mother. And Rashi says that Nafka lon mechi yosir as bincha mi'achrei. It's talking about yosir, when a person goes and is over avodah zara, worships idols. So he, the non-Jewish father, will take away the Jewish boy to be over avodah zara. But it doesn't say Tasir, she will take if she's not Jewish, since the child is not Jewish. It's only Yasir as bincha, that this non-Jewish man is going to take away your child. So we see from here, Beferish, that we go buster the mother, that we follow the maternity, we don't follow paternal, but rather maternal, the mother. Avaika banois. So he says, there are daughters. So what is that? V'yom ravina shmamina ben bitcha haba min avikachabim kar bincha. Now when it comes to your daughter's son, that comes from a non-Jew, that's still considered to be your son. So the question is, that means that, again, they're having children. So the Gemara says, Gemiri de benasa dahu dara. The women from that generation, it's taruye, it's taru. Their wombs were literally ripped apart. Namely, they were not able to have children. So because of that, it's not an issue. Fine. So again, the question is, but the women from, as we are going to discuss, the Aseres HaShvatim, were also in captivity, and they will marry men, and those kids are Jewish. So this son is now a Jew, and we should, again, be concerned for this Kedushin. So he said, the reality is that they didn't have children. They did not leave from there until they were considered as Ovid Kachavim Gemurim. What's the question for? Ma hashiv Shmuel al di Omer the Chayshishin Bizman Azel Kedushi Akum Shema Mibas Yud Aseres HaShvatim Hu. So why don't we have that concern? So he said in that generation, again, they were akaros, they were barren, or they were made into Ovid Kachavim Gemurim, and therefore for that reason, we're no longer chayshish, which is the exact same question as TB1. Literally the exact same question. Okay, weiter. So the Gemara continues and says as follows. Shnemar, it says, Hashem bogdu ki bonim zorim yoladu. It says that they rebelled from Hashem, and their children were zorim, which means that they were considered to be as non-Jews. So the Beferish, they were considered like strangers. Yosef Rabbi Yosef, Achuri de Rav Kahana, he was sitting behind him. Yosef Rav Kahana came to Rav Yehuda. Yosef Kamer, he said the following, that a seed in Israel, in the future, the Israelim de Abdi Yom Tava, that they will make literally a Yom Tov, a good day. Rashi says, Mishum de Mamzerim Haim, they're Mamzerim, Metamin b'Yisrael, they impurify Israel, upoisel noisan, they invalidate them. Ki charve tamroid, that that tamrod will be destroyed. So one day it'll be a great day when, again, Asim Yisrael, the Abdi Yom Tova, when will we make a Yom Tov? Because the people in Tamrod were Mamzerim, and they cause all these problems. So when it gets destroyed, it'll be a good day. What do you mean? It was destroyed already. What do you mean when it will? So hahi tamoid havoy. So again, it's possible that it's referring to a different place. Or Rashi says hachorav ulchorav kula. Not everything was destroyed. Rashi Amar hainu tarmoid hainu tamoid. Ichpulehu demikapel, that they doubled up later. Chariv mahai gisa, it was destroyed on one side. Oisa mahai gisa, it was rebuilt on the other side. The chariv mahai gisa, oisa mahai gisa. So therefore, it still exists. Yosef Rab hamnuna kamida ul v'ka havi b'shamta. So B'shmata, Omer said, "My gavra, what is this great person? My gavra, I love the harpanya maaseh. How could it come over here?" Says Rashi, "She'ena miuchasim, that they don't have pedigree." So Ichsef, by saying such a statement about this individual, was embarrassed. Ramulei kesev gulgolta lahecha yahavis. So he says, the silver taxes, where is it? Sarmalei lefum nahara. Sarmalei imkain lefum nahara at. It must be that you're from Lefum Nahara, which is a better location. So my harpanya. So Rav Zera har, it's referring to a mountain shakol poinimboy, that everyone turns to, which is referring to Bavel, where people go there. So says Rashi, Kol hapsulim she'en moitzin isha poinim b'hoichen sham. Masnisa tana kol she'en makir mishpachtoi. Anyone who doesn't recognize their family, v'shivtai niftal sham, goes over there. Omer Rabba v'hi amuka mishoil. So what is that? Rashi says v'ra l'davar zeh yoysim gehenim. This is even worse than gehenim de'ilu l'yard gehenim ikatakanta. At least there's some remedy. Dechsem yad shoil efdem. Mimavis, that they'll be redeemed from death. Egolim, v'ilu psuli didhu lesu takanta. There's no takana for these people. Shenamer miyad shoyel, from the hands of Gehenim. Efdame, I'll redeem them. Mimavas egolim, and from death they will be redeemed. V'il psul didhu lesu takanta. There's no takana for them. Psuli de harpanya, mishum psuli de meishain. The psul of the people in this place is because of the people in Meshain. Psuli de Meshain mishum psuli de Tarmoid, which we already talked about. Psuli de Tarmoid mishum Avdi Shlomo, which we saw in yesterday's daf. And again, the Avdi Shlomo, as we saw in Rashi, that this was referring to the people that again, it was Oikachavim ve'eved abal bas Yisrael that have Vlad Malmser. So behind it, Amri Inshi Kaba Rabba, which is a large measurement, Kaba Zuta, the smaller measurement, Mi Gandar, rolled down, V'ozul L'shoil, down to Gehenim. Mishol Tarmoin, Mitarmul Meshul Meshul L'harpanya. Okay. Harunulach Chamish Esri Nashim, Hanulach Chamish Esri Nashim, Hanulach Chamish Esri Nashim. We're now going to continue the second parak of Yevamos. So this was one of the cases in our first Mishnah, in the beginning of the Masechta, that if you have a situation where you have Reuven, who has a wife, Reuven dies childless, and he has another brother, Shimon, and then after Reuven dies, Levi is born. So Levi and Reuven were not alive at the same time. So Levi is not allowed to do Yibum with Reuven's wife, because that's an Achiv, Eishes Achiv, your brother's wife, Shul Haloya Balamo. You were not alive at the time that Reuven was alive. So Shnei Achim, if you have two brothers, Umeis Achmehen, and one of them dies, so again Reuven dies, V'noyled lehen ach. So again, what ends up happening, you have Shimon, who was alive, Reuven and Shimon were alive at the same time, and then Reuven dies with a wife, childless, and now the Zika goes to Shimon. Levi now is born. So Levi doesn't do anything, because V'nod lehen ach, even though they had, Levi was born before Yibum was done by Shimon, Levi cannot do Yibum with her because he was not alive at the time that his brother Reuven was alive. So what happens? Yavim Hasheni, Es Eishes Achiv. So what ends up happening? Shimon, who was alive when Reuven was alive, so yes, he's allowed to and should do Yibum, and he did. Umesa, then Shimon dies. So the question is like this: Levi was alive during this whole process when Shimon married through Yibum Reuven's Yevamot. So therefore, because of that, l'chara, you think Levi should be able to marry her. So Harishona Yotze Mishum Eishes Achiv. So the first woman, again, who was originally married to Reuven, and which Shimon did Yibum with. So first of all, that's Eishes Achiv Shlo Haya B'Lamoy. So it doesn't make any difference that Shimon married her already when Levi was born, because it goes after the first marriage with Reuven, and Reuven and Levi were not alive at the same time. So therefore, this woman, no. Now, what if Shimon had another wife when Shimon died? So this is like a Sarah. So because of that, Vashnia, the wife of Shimon, Mishum Sarasa. So because of the connection to Eishes Achiv Shol Haya B'Olamo, so since you can't marry her, she's like an Ereva. It's considered like Eishes Achiv Shlo B'Makam Mitzvah. So therefore now the Tzara also is someone you do not marry, you don't do Yibum with, Levi can't, and therefore she is Potter. Fine. And then the Mishnah says, also b'maimer mace. What if Shimon, Shimon already had another wife, Reuven died, but instead of doing Yibum, Shimon does maimer, which is Kedusha d'Rabbanan. So he's not really married Midoraisa to this woman. So the question is, what happens umeis if Shimon dies? So Shnia, so again, obviously, the question is, the first one is no Shaila. It's still Eishes Achiv Shel Haya B'Olamo. But the question is the Tzara. So we say that Shnia Chaletzes Lomis Yavemes. We say that he doesn't do Yibum, but at least he's now required to do Chalitza to the Tzara. Why? Because even though it's true that this woman is Eishes Achiv Shel Haya B'Olamo, but the marriage to Shimon is not really a marriage in Midoraisa. So therefore, because of that, it's not really a tzara Midoraisa. So that's the reason why at least chalitza needs to be done. Omer Rav Nachman, Mandatani Rishayna Mishtamish, Mandatani Shnilo Mishtamish. In our Mishnah, when it mentions the first one and the second one, either way you can understand the Mishnah is fine. So Mandatani Rishayna, as we continued Zayin Beis Lo Mishtabish, it's not a mistake. Why? My Rishayna Rishon L'Nefila. It means the first one L'Nefila. In other words, when she fell. In other words, when Reuven died. Umandatani Shniya L'Mishtabish. My Shniya L'Nesuin. It's referring to Shimon who married. Umilo Askinan. Are we not talking about the Yavim V'Achach Kanas that Shimon did Yibum? And then afterwards, he married his Tzara. So how do we know the case of Shimon, again, he has two wives, that he was already married, and then afterwards his brother died, and then Reuben died, and Shimon married the Yevamah? Maybe it was the other, maybe he did Yibum, and then he married. It means it's the second time falling to Yibum. Now the question is just, how do we see in the Torah that this is an Ereva? So Amar Yehuda, Amar Rab, Amar Kra, Ki Yeshu Achim Yachtav. It's only when they're brothers together. Shais Lahem Yeshiva Achas Ba'olam. Pral Eishes Achas Shalhai Ba'olamo. It has to be that they were alive at the same time. That's what it means that they were Yachtav. They were together. Yachtav Miuchadim Banachla. When it says Yachtav, it means that they are linked as far as inheritance, that they're able to be yorish one from the other. Pradlo achiv min aim. It's coming to exclude a brother from a mother, because when it comes to Yerusha, as it discusses at great length in Baba Basra, in 8th parak in Yesh Noichlin, it says that it's only Yerusha from the father's side, paternal, not from the mother. So too, when it comes to Yibum, it's only a relationship from being connected from the father. Obviously, if your brother is a full brother, then certainly Yibum. But even if it's just through your father, that is when Yibum takes place, not from your mother's side. Rabbi Omer Achim and Av Yolav Achva Mibnei Yaakov. They actually learn it out from Gzer Shava. Says Rashi, Ki Yeshu Achim Yach Shneim Aser Achim Bnei Avinu. It says that they were the children of their father. So of course the Shvatim, they had different mothers, but they all had the same father, Yaakov. Therefore, Malahol Min Av Min Aim Avkan Min Av Min Aim. So it's a different drasha. So V'lev Achva Ma'arayos. So why don't we learn out from Arayos? Says Rashi, Ervas Eshas Achicha, the erva of your brother's wife. Why don't we learn the Afil Achicha Min Aim V'lo Min Av? That it's coming to tell you that even if it is a brother from the mother's side, how do we know it's only from the father's side? So he says, Danim Achim Achim and Danim Achim Yachicha. They're different words. Yeah, but they're pretty close. My nafkamina, Tanim Eri Shmuel, Vashavakan Velkayin, Zuishim Zuhibia. So even though they're totally different words, we still learn out a Gzer Shava when it comes to Tsaras. So we say you're right. That's only if there's nothing else to compare it to. Fine. So in this situation, we would always link it. So we would always want to link it to the two words which are closest to one another. And therefore, if you're right, if it's two totally different words, but there's nothing to compare, no other possibility, so then that's fine. But over here, because we have a more direct connected word, two words together, we'd rather use the words that are similar. I have a leilif achva achva malot. Why do we learn out from lot? Dechsiv ki anoshim achim anachnu. That we are as brothers. Now, we know that Lot and Avraham were not really, we're not brothers, right? We know that Avram took care of his brother's son because Haran died in the Kivshan Eish, and because of that, he took care of his nephew. So the question is, maybe you would think an uncle and a nephew, there's a din yibum. So Mistabrim b'nei Yaakov hevel melech mishum demufni. Actually, it's better to learn there because those are extra words. Why? So b'nei avinu uksiv achim shmaminu lefnuye. The fact that it has this extra language, it's extra, and therefore, in order to make a drasha, we usually need to have something which is mufne, extra, and therefore that's why we went up from there, and not from that lot. We need both of these drashos to teach us the same din, that it has to be paternal brothers, not maternal, from these two different ways. From Yaakov Avinu, from the Shvatim, and also from the pasuk of Ki Yeshu Achim Yachtav. Why? And we only had the pasuk about the Achim, about the brothers, specifically talking about, again, with Yaakov Avinu. So Havamina Leil Achva Achim Lot. Therefore, we're learning out from our avos, so maybe we should learn out from Lot. And again, you would think maybe an uncle-nephew relationship, there's Yibum. They're extra. So it is extra. Could have had a different word. And therefore, it's coming to tell you it has to be someone who's miyuchad l'nachla. That's it's referring to. That it just someone has Yerusha, which is specifically the paternal brothers. Maybe you would think it's necessary, they have to have this connection, not just from your father's side, but both. You have to be full brothers only in order to be able to do Yibum. No, even a half brother, as long as it's paternal on the father's side. Fine. So on this is Tzricha. Question 5. Why do we need both of them? So as we said, because if it only said Achim, you would think learn out Melot. And if it only mentioned Yachtav, you would think that you need Miyuchadim B'Av'im. You would need the father and the mother has to be a full brother. Why do you need even in the Havamina to think that it would have to be both from your mother's and father's side? Yibu menachlo tal rachmana, menachlo min avlo min aimhi. Why would you even think that? Because we know Nachla is totally on the father. Why would you think you need both? The whole concept of Yibum is in itself is a great Chiddush. Because really she's an Ereva. She's your brother's wife. So because she's Eishes Ach, you would think maybe it doesn't work. Even though normally, fine, when it comes to Yerusha, it's even the father's enough. However, because this is a huge heter, maybe we're only going to allow it in the situation where it's mamish and complete brother, full brother. So interesting then that you have a shemeres yavam, which means that a woman was married and her husband died and they're childless. So she is zokuk to marry her husband's brother. So she didn't do it yet, so she's shomeres yavam. She's waiting for the yavam to do yibum. And then what happens? Shemesa. She dies. So the brother never did anything. He was never married to her. His brother was, but his brother died, and now she died. So mutter b'ima. He's allowed to marry her mother. Al moksavar in zika. We obviously see that there was not a strong connection between them. Because if there was a zika, then he wouldn't be able to marry her mother. Says Rashi. What does that mean, ein zika? Ditnan beperka chaylitz. We're going to see later on. It's very important, Rashi. We'll see all of this here. Shemeres yavam shekidish achav es achosa. So you have a shemeres yavam. Again, so this woman is waiting to do yibum. And what did this brother do? Instead of doing kedushin, or doing yibum rather, he decides to marry this woman's, the shemeres yavam's sister. Shel Yevamot v'tola hayibum ba'achiv mishum Rabbi Yehuda ben Beseira amru oimrim lezeh shekidish achos yevimto hamtein melichnos. He said, at least wait to marry because this woman is zokuk. Sarcha hamtin achidis yavim hayavamo achiv depaka zika. The Yom Shmuel halacha Rabbi Yehuda. Umedikaimer halacha machlad de pligeleha. Yom ein zika achiv chashival aser lehen kraboy seha. Now, Hani Mili says Rashi de chashiva zika lios asuros kros betreyachen. So again, let's say you have Reuven, Shimon, Levi. Reuven dies. So Shimon and Levi, either one of them could do yibum to this woman. So Shimon decides, I'm going to marry this Shomer Shavam's sister. So because of that, there's less of an issue, because even though if Shimon would marry the sister, Levi could still do yibum to the Shomer Shavam. So the Kivan do Yadia. We're not going to answer her karov, because after all, the other brother could do. So when it's two brothers, it's less of an issue if that one of the two brothers does the marriage to the other sister, because there's still another brother in the picture to do yibum with the shemer shavam. So let's see the Gemara. So again, Ksavar ein zika, v'lema halacha kediri ha'omer ein zika. So ihavi ha'omer hachi hadamili betray. Maybe the only time we would allow this is in a situation if there was two brothers. So therefore, again, here we're talking about a mother. Shomer Shavam dies, so this guy can marry the mother. Why? Maybe it's only when there's two brothers, because Lav Davka is this guy going to end up having a zika with her. He's not going to necessarily do yibum with her, and maybe his brother was going to do yibum. So the fact is that she died. Was really not connected to this brother. She could have been really connected to the other brother. If there's only one brother in the picture, he's obviously the one who is supposed to do yibum with the shemer shavam. So maybe there we're more strict. Says Rashi, she'en sham el yavam echad devadi oleha ramya. It's on him to marry her. Ema damya kechanusa the aser be'ima. Maybe in that situation, maybe he's not allowed to marry the mother even after the shemer shavam dies, because there was a zika, like she was it's like almost like quasi-married to you. Once there's that zika, because she is designated to marry you through yibum. So if you hold yesh zika, then even if she dies, maybe you're not able to marry the mother. So that's why we're saying no, it doesn't make any difference if there's two brothers or even one brother. The din is that they say ein zika, and therefore you could end up marrying the mother after the shomer shabam dies. The lema halacha kedibri oimer ein zika. Just say it that way. Feel machad. No iyam hachi haba minu feel machayim kamash malon. Lachar misa in machayim lo. Yishem asal vatal mitzvahs yavmin. Because, and this is actually question TC 30, which I just had this week, that is also question 6, that the only time we allow this brother to do it is only if the shomer shabam died. We're not going to allow you to marry the mother now. It's only after the woman dies, after the shomeris yavam dies. If the shomeris yavam dies, then you could marry the mother. Because otherwise, it's asal vata mitzvahs yavmin. You're basically shutting it down. Even if you hold ein zika. If you hold yesh zika, you can't do it. But if you hold ein zika, you can say, well, maybe it's not a problem. But the issue is that if you marry the mother, and she's a shomeris yavam, and you're the only brother, so you're basically, by doing that, shutting her out and not allowing you to be able to do yibum, because once you're married to the mother, you can't marry her. So therefore we say you're not allowed to marry the mother until after the shomer shabam dies. Tanan. So Yevimta Shemesa Yevama that dies, mutter bachosa. You're also allowed to marry the sister. Bachosa in be'im alo. L'chayra, you're only allowed to marry the sister, but not the mother. So why not? It must be because there's a zika. Now, huadin yafil be'ima. Really, you're allowed to marry the mother as well. Once the shomer shabam dies, there's no difference. So he said in the Reisha that ishto shemesa, in the case where the wife dies, you're allowed to marry the sister, only the sister but not the mother. That's what the pasuk says. If a person's wife dies, so you're actually allowed to marry the sister. That's only, again, not after divorce, but only after she dies. But that you're never allowed to marry the mother. So because of that, the havila isur deraisa. It's an isur deraisa to marry her. So tani namiresha mutter bachosa. But the truth is, there's nothing. It's not dafka the bachaisa. The din is also the mother. The mother's also you're allowed to marry. Rabbi Yehuda Omer shemeres yavam shemesa asur beima al maksaver yesh zika. So we actually hold that there's another shita that says no. The shomer yavam dies. The din is that the brother is not allowed to marry the mother. V'leima halacha. Why? Because he must hold yesh zika. Right? And because she has, the shomer yavam already has this connection to you, so therefore, even if she dies afterwards, that connection was strong enough that you can't marry her mother anymore. If you said this, you would think maybe only if there's only one brother. Maybe I will betray if there's two brothers, ein zika. If there's two brothers, maybe you would say that ein zika, and therefore he could do so. He could marry the mother. V'haki pligi betray pligi. But their whole machlokus is by two. So why would you even think this? Ela iomar hachi. If you would have said this as we continue to Chesed Aleph, Havamina Mechayim, you would think that you could even do this in alive. Avol Achar Misa, that whole issue is only while she's alive. Avol Achar Misa, once the shomer shabam dies, Pakala Zika, there's no longer Zika, right? So when the shomer shabam died, maybe since nothing happened, you think that you could marry the mother. So Kamashwan, the Zika Bechdi will Paka. Kamashwan, no, that even now the mother is still usher to you. So le masaile yevimto shemesa motabachosa bachosa in bimalo. It says beferish that you're allowed to marry the sister but not the mother. So it must be this is a raya. Where it says no, who I did, as we said before, yafil beima. The I did the tani reisha ishto. We're talking about the wife shemesa motabachosa dafka bachosa avulo beima. You can't marry the mother because the havli achsir deraisa, as we said before. That's the only reason why tananami seifa mutter bachosa, but it's not necessarily a riot or the other way a kasha. But again, it's a machlokas whether you hold yesh zika or ein zika ad kan.